One night, I was on the side of the road whilst on patrol, just taking a breather and rejuvenating with a coffee, when I started hearing something. It sounded like there was a vehicle approaching where I was. Then suddenly, this truck just zoomed past me, and it was driving erratically. Immediately, I pursued the driver. I believed that it was odd and even suspicious that someone would be on that road that late in frigid November. I suspected the driver of poaching in the backwoods and signaled for him to pull over. He pulled over and I approached the driver. I shined the light on his face and he had blood smeared all over his face. I asked him about the blood. He told me that he had poached and clubbed a deer to death. After this, I inspected his truck. In the back, I found a bloody wrench and scissors. I questioned him further, but was getting a lot of inconsistencies. I decided to arrest him under the Wildlife Act and to investigate his claim of killing an animal inhumanely. I got in contact with a conservation officer who had tracking skills and asked if he would assist in tracking the carcass. He managed to locate tire tracks matching the truck on a road off the highway he was caught on. He traced the tire tracks up the road, and in the freshly fallen snow he found footprints leading into the woods. He tracked the footprints, constantly on the lookout for the deceased deer. What he ended up finding would shock him to the core. There laid in the snow the body of a young girl. She had been brutally beaten and even more brutally murdered. Despite being in the snow, the body was actually still warm, which shows just how close we were to catching this guy in the act. He was charged with murder, and I'm hoping that they throw away the key. This happened to me a few nights ago. I was taking my dog for his nightly walk. It was a bit of a windy night, otherwise it was pretty standard. I've never had any trouble taking these walks, so I was pretty carefree, and I also allowed my dog to walk without a leash. I've lived in this area for a few years, and at least from my experience, I considered it to be low on the number of weirdos, and it mostly contained good people. I was continuing to walk when out of nowhere I heard a voice from a man, and they said, "Would you like a smoke?" He then held out a pack of cigarettes. I was startled. I had no idea someone was even there. My dog took an instant disliking to the person. No thanks, I responded. Immediately, he left. I continued on my walk, thinking nothing of the incident. Just some weirdo in the park, nothing more to it. What I didn't realize was that the man was on his way back to me. Not just casually, he was running, and he was quickly catching up to me. I awoke. I was very confused. I felt immense pain in my knee, but especially my neck. Thankfully, as soon as I was awake, my dog was there to comfort me. The mysterious man was gone. What did he want? None of my belongings were missing. Why was he strangling me? These questions have been left unanswered. I reported the incident to the police, but unfortunately the man was never found. Safe to say, I now only take my dog for a walk during the day. A couple of years ago, I experienced something I hope I never have to go through again. It started off as a normal morning. My partner was up first and was getting ready for work, whilst I was with our newborn, who was a bit restless. My partner kissed me, left and shut the door, and that's when things started to get unsettling. Whilst resting, I could hear what sounded like footsteps coming down the hall towards my room, but that did not make any sense, as my partner should have left for work already. Maybe he forgot something. I realized suddenly that I could not move, and this wave of impending fear and dread just came over me. He walked in the room towards the wardrobe and stood there facing me and whispered my name. Anna. He said my name again, this time in a sing-song voice. There was pauses, waiting to see if I was going to respond. He sat down on the bed, and I could feel a hand on my thigh. I remember feeling scared for my newborn, because although it sounded like my partner, I just had this nagging feeling that it was not him. Still, I could not move. I wanted to turn and see who it was, but I was frozen still. I could open and close my eyes, but that was it. I squeezed my eyes shut to try and go back to sleep so everything would stop and this thing or person would go away. I think I fell asleep and woke back up, and when I woke up, I could now move, but I was very scared. I was still convinced that there was someone in the house. I knew my phone was flat, but if it wasn't, I know I would have called the police. Looking back, I now know what I believe actually happened. I believe I experienced sleep paralysis. As bad as that was, it's nowhere near as frightening as the prospect of someone being in the house imitating my partner. Honestly, I prefer the sleep paralysis story. It was Halloween 2013. I was 16 years old and was trick-or-treating with my 6-year-old nephew in our local town. We had covered about 2 blocks door knocking for treats and were very successful with the amount of treats that we managed to get. We then reached our next destination. This house had no fences and a long, curved driveway which led to the front door. We knocked on the door and I stood back so my nephew could take the lead on this visit. It seemed like nobody was going to answer and we were about to give up when suddenly the door opened. A woman answered the door. She had dark eyes. She had dark, long hair. She was dressed in dark, daggy clothing. She looked like she had had a hard life. She did not say a word after she opened the door. In her hand she had a wafer tin, and she just stuck it out towards my nephew. He took 2 of the wafers. We both said thank you, and the lady just shut the door without saying anything. I couldn't help but feel suspicious about the wafers that the lady gave us, because I had noticed that the chocolate on the inside of the wafer appeared to have been scraped out. I decided to tell my nephew that he could not eat the wafer and that we should wait until we get home, but he wanted to eat it anyway as he wanted to prove me wrong. So I proceeded to test the wafer. I ate the whole wafer. What happened next is a bit of a blur, but I recall knocking the wafer out of my nephew's hand and stomping on it. We decided to walk back to my sister's house because immediately after consuming the wafer, I was not feeling right. My body felt stiff and was seizing up. Everything around me seemed to be speeding up. On our way back, there's one thing I will never forget. I recall seeing a family. There was a mum, dad, and a son. The son was dressed up as Jigsaw from the movie Saw, and it's just something that never left my mind. The boy was just staring at me for a very long time and wouldn't stop staring. As we were getting closer to the house, I started feeling things I could only assume were side effects. I was starting to feel nauseous, and there was some odd sensation in my chest where my heart was beating really fast. Felt like there was a bubble in my chest. I realized I was also struggling to control my hands, and I was just constantly twitching. Eventually, we got back to the house, and my family members were trying to figure out what had happened. One of my relatives thought maybe the wafer contained marijuana, but that just did not seem right to me at all. We decided the best thing to do was to go to the hospital to find out what was going on. So we got in the car, we made our way there. We did a blood test at the hospital, and it was after this that the doctor had a startling revelation. He would go on to tell us that they found methamphetamine in my system. I was shocked. What was even more shocking was the doctor said it was extremely fortunate that my nephew did not consume any, as it was a dose big enough that I could have killed him. Unfortunately, due to the effects of the drug, I just could not pinpoint where the lady lived, so she did in fact get away with it. My takeaway from all of this, and my only piece of advice I will give to you after this story: never accept unwrapped candy from a stranger at Halloween. Ever.